Spoštovani gospe in gospodje, predstavniki medijev, dober dan, dobrodošli v založbi Družina na predstavitvi slovenske izdaje knjižne uspešnice Roda Dreherja Ne živite od laži. Gre za knjigo priznanega ameriškega publicista, misleca, pisatelja, v kateri s pomočjo spominov krščanskih disidentov iz nekdanjih držav vzhodnega bloka v Evropi kaže na podobne težave, ki se prikazujejo sedaj v zahodnem svetu, zlasti v Združenih državah Amerike, tudi v zahodni Evropi, v obliki tako imenovanega mehkega totalitarizma. Kaj vse to pomeni, nam bo povedal sam. Izredno me veseli, da avtorja, gospoda Roda Dreherja, lahko pozdravimo v Ljubljani. Pri nas se je na kratko ustavil v okviru njegove mednarodne turneje po deželah vzhodne Evrope, kar nekaj mesecev že prebiva in raziskuje v Budimpešti na Madžarskem kot gost ustanove Danube Institute. Spoštovani gospod Dreher, kot rečeno, obisk v Ljubljani je del vaše vzhodnoevropske turneje. Kakšni so doslej vaši vtisi o teh državah, ki ste jih obiskali?
Well, for me as an American who has traveled extensively throughout Western Europe, I feel that I'm discovering both a new world and an old world.
Zame, kot za Američana, ki je veliko potoval po zahodni Evropi, je to potovanje odkrivanje tako novega kot starega sveta.
It's a new world to me because we in America haven't often thought about Central Europe and Eastern Europe as accessible to us, we who grew up in the Cold War, I should say.
Zakaj govorim o odkrivanju novega sveta? Ker mi, ki smo zrasli v obdobju hladne vojne v Ameriki, nikoli nismo razmišljali o srednji in vzhodni Evropi kot o deželah, ki so nam dostopne.
Yeah, but it's also an old world because even under the Soviet occupation and under the communism, the years of communism, these countries did not stop being part of Europe, part of the West.
Hkrati pa je to stari svet, kajti te dežele, te države, tudi pod sovjetsko okupacijo in pod komunizmom nikoli niso prenehale biti del Evrope.
It has been very encouraging to me to see the rebirth of life in Central Europe 30 years after the fall of the Berlin Wall.
Zelo spodbudno je zame, ko vidim, kako se je obnovilo življenje v srednji Evropi 30 let po padcu Berlinskega zidu.
But what concerns me is the way that so many of the problems and the disorders of the West are now being accepted uncritically by younger generations here in Central Europe.
Kar pa me skrbi je, da so mlade generacije v srednji Evropi nekritično prevzele toliko problemov in motenj, če jih lahko tako imenujemo, iz Zahoda.
I wrote my book to use the wisdom of Christian dissidents from communism to wake up my fellow Americans to the dangers of soft totalitarianism affecting our society.
In to knjigo sem napisal zato, da bi z uporabo modrosti krščanskih disidentov pod komunizmom prebudil svoje ameriške sodržavljane in jih opozoril na nevarnosti mehkega totalitarizma.
I did not anticipate that this book would also be useful to the younger generations of the countries that once suffered under communism.
Nisem pa predvidel, da bo ta knjiga lahko pomagala tudi mladim v državah, ki so nekoč same trpele pod komunizmom.
It has been a real surprise to me to learn that those who were born after the end of communism, that so many of them don't see the dangers of what's coming from the West.
In presenetilo me je, da toliko ljudi rojenih po padcu komunizma ne vidi, koliko in kakšne nevarnosti prihajajo iz Zahoda.
My hope is that this book will encourage them to speak to their parents and their grandparents, and also inspire their parents and grandparents to have these conversations with their kids about what it was like.
In upam, da bo moja knjiga vzpodbudila te mlade, da bodo se pogovorili s starši, starimi starši o teh časih, in po drugi strani, da bo tudi ta knjiga vzpodbudila starše in stare starše, da bodo sami začeli se pogovarjati z mladimi.
This memory, the memories of the generations who lived under communism are precious. They won't last forever. These people are starting to die. We need to talk to them now and to discover what they have to tell us, because our own freedom depends on it.
In vsi ti spomini generacij, ki so živele pod komunizmom, so dragoceni. Ti ljudje ne bodo z nami zavedno, počasi bodo umrli in z njimi se moramo pogovoriti zdaj in ugotoviti, kaj je tisto, kar je pomembno za svobodo.
If I could say one more thing about this. I went to Romania last month. This book has appeared in Romania. My publisher there said, "We don't know how many people will come to hear you speak. We hope to get 100. We hope to sell 50 books, but please don't expect a big crowd."
Še nekaj bi rad povedal. Prejšnji mesec sem bil na obisku v Romuniji, kajti knjiga je išla tudi tam. In založnik je rekel, ne vemo, koliko ljudi bo prišlo, upamo kakšnih 100 in upamo, da bomo prodali kakšnih 50 knjig.
We had 500 people come to hear me talk from all over Romania. Some took a train for 12 hours and we sold 400 books. It was completely shocking.
Kar se je v resnici zgodilo, pa je bilo, da je prišlo na dogodek 500 ljudi iz vse Romunije, nekateri so morali več ur se voziti z vlakom in prodali smo 400 knjig, kar je bil pravi šok za nas.
These people, they're all Christians, and they all kept saying over and over, "Thank you for coming as an American to say these things." They had been taught by the elites in Romania and by Romanian media, by Romanian political leaders, that they're backwards, that they're ignorant, that their religion is primitive, and that they all needed to change and to become progressive so they can be part of the modern world.
Vsi ti ljudje, ki so prišli, so bili kristjani in nenehno so mi govorili in ponavljali hvala, da ste prišli in da ste nam povedali te reči kot Američan, kajti nam politične elite, mediji nenehno govorijo, da smo zaostali, da se moramo spremeniti tudi svojo vero in verska prepričanja in postati progresivni zato, da bi bili lahko del modernega sveta.
And here was I, an American, arriving to tell them, there's nothing wrong with you. We Americans need to learn from you what you have preserved. They were shocked to hear it and grateful to hear it, because I told them, you're not crazy and you're not alone.
Zdaj pa sem prišel jaz, Američan, in glasno dejal, da z njimi ni nič narobe. Mi kot Američani se moramo učiti od vas, učiti se moramo o tem, kar ste vi ohranili, in vi ste v redu, niste niti nori, niti niste osamljeni.
Vaša knjiga, ki je pravkar izšla v slovenščini v dobrem prevodu kolega Andreja Lokarja, ki ga prav tako pozdravljam pri našem omizju, ima zanimiv naslov Ne živite od laži. Bi lahko pojasnili izvor tega naslova in zakaj ste se odločili zanj?
The title comes from a 1974 essay by Alexander Solzhenitsyn that he sent to his followers in Russia just before the Soviets sent him into exile in 1974.
Naslov je v bistvu povzet po naslovu eseja Aleksandra Solženicina iz leta 1974, ki je poslal ta esej svojim sodržavljanom tik preden so ga sovjetske oblasti izgnale iz Sovjetske zveze leta 1974.
In this short essay, Solzhenitsyn acknowledged to his readers that they can't do anything to overturn the totalitarian state, but that doesn't mean that they can do nothing.
V svojem kratkem eseju Solženicin svojim bralcem prizna, da ne morejo v bistvu vreči totalitarnega režima iz oblasti, ampak da to še ne pomeni, da ne morejo ničesar storiti.
What all of us can do, says Solzhenitsyn, is refuse to live by the lies that the regime expects us to affirm.
Kar lahko vsak od nas stori, je, pravi Solženicin, da ne živi od laži, ki jih nam vsiljuje režim in za katere režim hoče, da jih mi vzamemo za svoje.
So communism might rule the society, but let it not rule through my consent.
Skratka, komunizem lahko vlada družbi, vendar naj tega ne počne z mojim soglasjem.
So he advised his readers to refuse to say things that they believe were untrue, just for the sake of conforming.
In svojim bralcem Solženicin predlaga, naj nikakor ne izgovarjajo stvari, za katere vedo, da niso resnične, samo zato, da bi bili konformistični.
This is where the resistance begins. This is a form of resistance that everybody can do in some form.
Tu se začne odpor. To je tiste vrste odpor, ki ga vsakdo lahko uresničuje.
And he said that if only a few thousand people did this, it would change the whole country.
In dejal je, če bi le kakšnih nekaj tisoč ljudi to dejansko počelo, potem bi to spremenilo celotno državo.
In the same era, Václav Havel in Czechoslovakia made the same argument.
In v tem podobnem času, v istem času, je Václav Havel na Češkoslovaškem imel podoben argument.
Havel told the parable of the greengrocer who refuses to put a sign in his window, "Workers of the world unite."
Havel je povedal zgodbo, pač neko parabolo o nekem zelenjadarju, ki ni hotel v svoje izložbeno okno postaviti napisa "Proletarci vseh dežel, združite se."
In Havel's parable, none of the shopkeepers believe "Workers of the world unite." They only put it there to avoid trouble.
V tej Havlovi zgodbi nihče od teh malih trgovcev ni dejansko verjel v ta slogan, samo postavili so ta napis zato, da ne bi imeli težav.
Imagine, says Havel, what happens if the greengrocer takes the sign down? What happens to him? Well, he loses his business, he's persecuted by the state, he will have to suffer for his beliefs.
In predstavljajte si, je dejal Havel, kaj bi se zgodilo, če bi ta trgovec umaknil napis iz izložbenega okna, verjetno bi izgubil svojo trgovino, preganjali bi ga, dejansko bi trpel za svoja prepričanja.
But what has the suffering of the greengrocer said to the wider society? It has said that if we are willing to suffer for our principles, then it is possible to live in truth. It is possible to live not by lies.
Ampak kaj to trpljenje pove širši družbi? Pove to, da če smo pripravljeni trpeti za svoje prepričanja, je možno živeti v resnici, možno je, da ne živimo od laži.
And if, said Havel, enough people do this, then the system which depends on lies to exist will collapse.
In če dovolj ljudi to stori, potem sistem, ki je odvisen od laži, propade.
So I chose this title because I believe in the West today there are more and more lies that we are forced to live by.
In ta naslov sem pravzaprav izbral zato, ker se mi zdi, da je na Zahodu dan današnji vse več laži, po katerih moramo živeti.
I'll give one short example. Right now in Los Angeles, there is a huge controversy because at a spa, a transgender, a male presenting as a woman, went into the women's area of the spa, took off his clothes, and everyone saw his penis.
Zakaj pravzaprav to govorim? Zato, ker je zdaj velika kontroverzna tema debat, dogodek iz Los Angelesa, kjer je v nekem kopališču moški, ki se je predstavljal kot ženska, šel v ženski del kopališča, se tam slekel in vsi so lahko videli njegov penis.
Many of the women protested. They were very angry. But gender ideology says, oh no, that is a woman. That person with the penis is a woman.
Veliko ženskih obiskovalk je bilo takrat jeznih, ampak ideologija spola je zdaj takšna, da razglaša tega človeka za žensko, čeprav ima penis.
Yesterday, the Los Angeles Times, the newspaper in Los Angeles, published an editorial defending the spa and defending the transgender. The Times said that this transgender had, quote, male-appearing genitalia. Translate that.
Yes, I will. Včeraj je časopis Los Angeles Times objavil uvodnik, v katerem uvodničar opravičuje tako kopališče kot tudi to transspolno osebo in v katerem je zapisano, da je ta oseba imela na videz moške spolne organe, spolni organ.
So they can't say the word penis because it violates the ideology. They have to lie about it, and they expect everybody to lie about it to avoid the ideology collapsing in the face of absurdity.
In kot vidite, niti niso mogli izreči besede penis, kajti to bi bilo v nasprotju z njihovo ideologijo. Izreči so morali pač te laži, kajti v nasprotnem primeru bi se morali soočiti z absurdnostjo svojih trditev.
Now we can laugh at this, and we should laugh at it, but it's deadly serious. People in America are losing their jobs for not agreeing with this ideology.
Temu se sicer lahko malo posmehnemo in tudi prav je tako, vendar ne smemo pozabiti, da so stvari zelo, zelo resne, kajti že zdaj ljudje v ZDA izgubljajo delovna mesta, če se ne strinjajo s to ideologijo.
In Romania, Facebook kicked a journalist off of Facebook for publishing an interview with me talking about these lies. And in Hungary, Facebook Hungary warned a conservative magazine to stop publishing anything about me because I'm dangerous.
In recimo v Romuniji je Facebook
They kicked the journalist off.
Zablokiral novinarja, ki je objavil intervju s gospodom. Na Madžarskem prav tako konservativni časnik je dobil opozorilo, rekoč, da je, oziroma da sem jaz nevaren.
Now, for me as a journalist, that's exciting. Facebook thinks I'm dangerous. But there's a serious point here, and the point is this. These journalists in this magazine depend on Facebook to help them do their business. And here is Facebook deciding that these thoughts cannot be discussed, that anything that questions the lies must not be heard.
Zdaj, kot novinar, seveda sem navdušen, ne? Facebook me razglaša za nevarnega, ampak v bistvu je treba biti pozoren pa na to, da Facebook marsikateremu časopisu in mediju omogoča prihodek in da je res vprašljivo to, če Facebook razglaša, da določenih stvari se ne sme, o nekaterih stvarih se ne sme razpravljati.
I'll give you one more example. Earlier this year in the US, Amazon said it will no longer publish books that present transgenderism as a mental disorder.
In še en primer vam bom dal. Namreč na začetku tega leta je Amazon razglasil, da ne bo več objavljal književnih del, ki obravnavajo transspolnost kot duševno motnjo.
Now, Amazon has the perfect right to do this. No bookseller should be forced to sell a book he doesn't want to.
Amazon ima seveda vso pravico, da to stori, nihče ne bi smel biti primoran objavljati ali prodajati knjig, ki jih ne želi.
But here's the consequence of that decision. Amazon controls so much of the American book retail market that if it decides it will not sell a certain kind of book, those books will not be published. No publisher can afford to publish them.
Ampak posledica takšne odločitve ni zanemarljiva, kajti Amazon obvladuje tako velik del ameriškega maloprodajnega trga za knjige, da če se on odloči, da ne bo distribuiral določenih knjig, potem se ne bo nihče odločil, da jih objavi, kajti nihče si ne more privoščiti objave knjige, ki je potem ne more prodati.
And so this idea is exiled from the public discourse.
In tako se potem te ideje iz teh del na nek način izvržejo iz javnega diskurza.
And this is an important point about soft totalitarianism. This is not the act of the state banning this. This is the free decision of a free bookseller that results in the de facto banning of a certain kind of book and therefore a certain kind of idea.
Zdaj pa pridemo do te pomembne točke v definiciji tega mehkega totalitarizma. Namreč tu ne gre za neko prepoved, ki bi prišla z vrha, strani države, ampak gre za prosto odločitev nekega prostega trgovca, ki se je za to pač svobodno odločil. Ampak posledica pa je de facto prepoved določenih knjig in določenih idej.
And this is how within a free society, a liberal democratic society, that a kind of totalitarianism can take root. But people don't see that because our idea of totalitarianism involves Stalin and gulags and secret police. We don't have that. Meanwhile, our liberties are slowly being taken away from us.
Na ta način se v sodobnih, svobodnih, liberalnih, demokratičnih družbah zakorenini totalitarizem. In tega ljudje niti ne opazijo, kajti totalitarizem povezujemo s Stalinovo dobo, z gulagi, s tajno policijo. Tega pač nimamo, ampak kljub temu se naše svoboščine krčijo.
Bi morda na kratko še pojasnili, knjigo posvečate predvsem kristjanom. Pripovedujete zgodbe o krščanskih disidentih in trdite, da smo kristjani na nek način poseben branik tradicionalnih vrednot, ki jih je treba zaščititi oziroma ki ponujajo primerna orodja v obrambi pred napadi mehkega totalitarizma. Bi lahko na kratko povzeli, kaj je tisto bistveno, s čimer se kristjani lahko trdno postavimo nasproti tej nevarnosti?
Bring upon an opposition to this danger.
I can't give you a short anything.
Nič ne bo.
I'll try.
Na kratko ne morem povedati, ampak bom poskusil.
I dedicated this book to the memory of Father Tomislav Kolakovic, a Croatian Catholic priest who was a real inspiration for me and I think for people today.
V bistvu sem to knjigo posvetil spominu na patra Kolakoviča, ki je bil hrvaškega rodu, katoliški duhovnik hrvaškega rodu, ki je bil zame velik navdih in ki mislim, da je lahko navdih tudi dan današnji za ljudi.
Father Kolakovic was living in Zagreb in 1943 doing anti-Nazi work when he got a message that the Germans were coming to arrest him. He escaped the country and went to Bratislava, in his mother's homeland, and began teaching in the Catholic University there.
Pater Kolakovič je živel v Zagrebu, ko je leta 1943 skratka tam je živel v tem letu in je bil angažiran v protinacistične aktivnosti, ko je nenadoma dobil sporočilo, da ga bodo Nemci aretirali. Zato je prebegnil v Bratislavo, ki je bila v bistvu na Slovaško, rodno deželo njegove matere.
He told his students, I have good news and bad news for you.
Tam je začel učiti na katoliški univerzi in svojim študentom je dejal, za vas imam dobro in slabo novico.
The good news is the Germans are going to lose this war. The bad news is the Soviets are going to be ruling us when it's over, and the first thing they're going to do is to persecute the church.
Dobra novica je, da bodo Nemci izgubili to vojno. Slaba pa je, da ko se bo to zgodilo, bodo prevzeli oblast Sovjeti in prva stvar, ki jo bodo storili, je, da bodo začeli preganjati cerkev.
So he began to organize small groups, mostly of students, Catholic students, who would come together for prayer, but also to talk about what was happening in the society around them and what they should do to protect the church during this time to come.
Zato je začel organizirati majhne študentske krožke, skupine študentovske, kjer so se ljudje zbirali, da bi molili, pa tudi, da bi se pogovarjali o tem, kar se dogaja v družbi in kaj lahko naredijo, da zaščitijo cerkev.
They used a method that Father Kolakovic taught them. It had 3 parts: see, judge, act. In Pater Kolakovič je predstavil metodo, sestavljeno iz 3 korakov: glej oziroma opazuj, presodi in deluj. To explain this, by see, he meant that they should all come together and talk about what was actually happening in their society.
Pod opazuj je pater učil svoje učence, naj opazujejo, kaj se dogaja v družbi in se potem dobijo skupaj in se pogovorijo o tem.
By judge, he meant that they should discuss among themselves what the things that they are seeing mean and what they should do about this as faithful Catholics.
Pod presodi je pater dejal, to pomeni, da morate se dobiti in razpravljati o tem, kaj to pomeni, kar se dogaja v družbi, kaj lahko naredite sami kot verni kristjani.
And of course, by act, that meant that they had to make a decision about what they were going to do, then leave the meeting and do these things. It wasn't just a discussion group. This was a group that the discussion was heading towards doing things in the real world.
In pod deluj je pater dejal svojim učencem, to pomeni, da je treba tu na tem srečanju tudi sprejeti kakšno odločitev o tem, kaj je treba storiti, zato da potem, ko gredo iz tega srečanja, dejansko v realnem svetu to tudi naredijo, da ni to samo nek debatni krožek.
One of the things they learned how to do was how to survive an interrogation. because they began to realize, these students, that if what Father Kolakovic said was coming actually happened, then they would need to know how to be interrogated by the secret police and not betray their comrades.
In ena izmed teh tem je bila tudi, kako preživeti zaslišanje, kajti jasno jim je postalo, da se bo treba opremiti s takšnim znanjem, če jih bo začela zasliševati tajna policija in da bodo morali vedeti, kako ravnati, da ne bi izdali svojih tovarišev.
Now, the Slovak Catholic bishops saw this and they said, wait, Father, stop it. You're scaring people. You're alarming them. That will never happen here.
Slovaški katoliški škofje so to videli in so želeli patra ustaviti, dejali so, da on ljudi straši, da po nepotrebnem zganja alarm.
But he didn't listen to the bishops because Father Kolakovic had studied the Soviet Union. He wanted to be a missionary there, and he knew the communist mindset. So he continued his work and spread this network of groups all over Slovakia.
Ampak pater Kolakovic ni poslušal teh škofov, ampak zakaj ne? Zato, ker je poznal način razmišljanja v Sovjetski uniji. Sovjetsko unijo je namreč dobro preštudiral, ker je želel postati misionar v Sovjetski uniji. In je še naprej nadaljeval s svojim delom v teh skupinah.
And in 1948, everything the priest said would happen, did happen. The groups he formed and the network across Slovakia became the backbone for the underground church for the next 40 years.
In leta 1948 se je vse, o čemer je ta pater govoril, tudi dejansko zgodilo. Da omrežje teh skupin, ki jih je on ustvaril, pa je potem postalo hrbtenica za naslednjih 40 let za cerkev v neki vrsti ilegali.
I believe that today we are in a Kolakovic moment in the West.
In dejal bi, da danes na Zahodu živimo ta Kolakovičev moment.
We have to prepare ourselves for persecution.
Pripraviti se moramo na preganjanje.
In the book, I get advice from former dissidents throughout the former Soviet bloc nations about things we can actually do to get ready.
In v knjigi mi pričevanja raznih nekdanjih disidentov iz držav Sovjetskega vzhodnega bloka pomagajo, da predstavim, kaj se dejansko da narediti, kako se lahko pripravimo.
Very quickly, one of them is to form small groups now.
In čisto na kratko, ena od stvari, ki jih lahko naredimo, je, da začnemo oblikovati majhne skupine že zdaj.
Another one is to deepen our knowledge of our cultural memory, that is to say the history, the art, the literature of our culture.
Druga stvar, ki jo lahko naredimo, je, da poglobimo svoje znanje o kulturnem spominu, o kulturi, umetnosti našega naroda.
Another one is to become much more devoted to practicing our faith, not just thinking about it, but practicing it.
Še ena stvar, ki jo lahko naredimo, je, da veliko bolj jasno in tudi bolj predano prakticiramo svojo vero. Da ne razmišljamo samo o tem, ampak da da gremo v dejanje.
The most important thing I learned from these dissidents, though, is that we need to prepare ourselves to suffer.
In tisto najpomembnejše, kar sem se naučil od teh disidentov, je, da moramo biti pripravljeni trpeti.
Nobody wants to hear this today. I don't want to hear it myself, but it happens to be true.
Seveda tega noče nihče slišati dan današnji, še jaz sam ne, ampak je pač res.
This one old Baptist pastor in Russia told me that if you are not willing to suffer for your faith, then your faith is nothing but hypocrisy.
Star baptistični pastor v Rusiji mi je dejal, če nisi pripravljen trpeti za svojo vero, potem je le ta samo hipokrizija, samo hinavščina.
And this is the same message I heard over and over in every country from every dissident, that your faith is tested and proven by your willingness to suffer in small ways and big ways for Jesus Christ.
In to sem slišal, to je sporočilo, ki sem ga slišal iz vseh teh disidentskih ust, iz vseh dežel, namreč, da je vaša vera na preizkušnji in da se tudi dokazuje preko majhnega in velikega trpljenja oziroma vaše pripravljenosti, da na velik ali majhen način trpite za Jezusa Kristusa.
In Prague, one dissident, Kamila Bendova, told me, Rod, you mustn't imagine that all Christians stood up. Most Christians conformed. They kept their head down and conformed. He's a Catholic, by the way.
V Pragi mi je ena od teh disidentk, namreč Kamila Bendova, dejala, veš, Rod, nikar si ne predstavljaj, da je velika večina kristjanov se zoperstavila. Nikakor ne, velika večina se jih je uklonila in ona je bila katoličanka.
She said that one thing that we Christians have to do is identify who is brave enough to stand up to persecution, even if they're not Christian, and we have to stand by them.
Gospa Bendova je dejala, da moramo kristjani prepoznati, kdo je dovolj pogumen, da se lahko zoperstavi pregonu, tudi če ni kristjan, in da je treba takšne ljudi podpreti.
Kamila and her husband, Václav Benda, were the only Catholics in the inner circle around Václav Havel and the other Czech dissidents.
Kamila in njen mož Václav Benda sta bila edina katolika v tem ožjem krogu zbranim okrog Václava Havla, v tem ožjem krogu disidentov.
I asked her, was it difficult for you and your husband as strict Catholics to be in such close partnership with people who lived and believed things very, very different from you?
Vprašal sem jo, ali je bilo zanjo kot za tako prepričano katoličanko težko tako tesno sodelovati z ljudmi, ki so v bistvu imeli zelo drugačna prepričanja.
And she said no, because again, courage was the thing that united us, that it was so difficult to stand up to totalitarianism. When you found someone who did have that courage, that was the most important thing, and that was the bond of solidarity that you established.
Odgovorila mi je, da ne, sploh ne, kajti tisto, kar nas je vse združevalo, je bil pogum. Zelo težko se je zoperstaviti totalitarizmu in ta pogum je bila tista vez, ki nas je združila v solidarnosti.
We can see this today in my own country. Most Christians are conforming completely with soft totalitarianism.
In to zdaj lahko že tudi opazujemo v ZDA, v moji državi. Večina kristjanov se je uklonila temu mehkemu totalitarizmu.
Because it's hard to stand up. It's scary. They fear the world more than they fear the Lord.
In zato zakaj? Zato, ker je težko se je dvigniti, zoperstaviti in ti ljudje se bolj kot Gospodove jeze bojijo sveta.
But I have made good allies with some people who are atheists on the left, but they recognize that the threat we face, the nature of the threat that we all face to our freedoms. And these people, I would rather have them on my side than all the people, the Christians who share my belief but don't have courage.
In sam sem sklenil že zelo lepa zavezništva v bistvu z ateisti, levo usmerjenimi ateisti, ki tako kot jaz prepoznavajo grožnjo za naše svoboščine in z njimi veliko lažje delujem kot z vsemi drugimi bolj prepričanimi kristjani, ki pa nimajo tega poguma.
Hvala lepa, zelo se veselimo branja vaše knjige, še bolj pa vašega večernega predavanja, ki ga bo gostila založba Družina. Zaključili bomo tiskovno konferenco še z izjavo prevajalca, gospoda Andreja Lokarja. Avtor knjige uporablja številne primere disidentov iz Češke, Slovaške, Poljske, torej iz držav nekdanjega sovjetskega bloka, ne pa slovenskih primerov, zato bi vas morda izzval z vprašanjem, če vidite tudi kakšne zgodovinske in sedanje okoliščine, ki so blizu stvarem, o katerih piše gospod Rodrik.
Ja, zaradi tega, kar so vprašali, je tako, o tem bi bilo treba najbrž pospremiti v zvezi s temto knjigo Spremno besedo, smo hiteli z izdajo in zaradi tega ni bilo to mogoče, ne? Ampak če bo šel po natisku, da bo tako prodano se naklada, tako da bo šel po natisku, potem bi lahko prejeli Spremno besedo, ki bi spregovorila o tem, zdaj je bilo predolgo tudi govoriti tule o naših disidentih in tako naprej. Zato bi se raje osredotočil na nekaj drugega, ne? Zakaj sem jaz tako bil vztrajen tudi pri vaši založbi in tako naprej, da bi ta knjiga išla oziroma da bi sam rod bil promoviran v Sloveniji kot avtor. Namreč z nekaterimi prijatelji smo se odločili, da bomo tudi sami in pač drugimi sodelavci, in vaša založba je seveda bila zelo nam je prisluhnila pri tem, da bi začeli uvajati pač to konservativno tradicijo politične, ne samo politične filozofije, filozofije nasploh, ne. In zdaj mi v Sloveniji poznamo tudi, v bistvu sem tudi zdaj v tem odgovoru na to vprašanje se dotočil na pač vprašanja, ki sem tudi poprej sem imel intervju z Rodom in sem mu že zastavil tudi vprašanje. Gre za to, da mi v bistvu poznamo v Sloveniji en tak nereflektirani konservativizem, to se je pokazalo, kaj se je pri našem družinskem zakoniku, ne, rezultatu pač referenduma, ne. Nismo nikoli pa razvili ene konservativne filozofske misli. In jaz mislim, da so Rodove knjige v tem pogledu idealne, da bomo začeli, da bi začeli to v slovenski kulturni prostor uvajati. Ker, in tukaj bi izpostavil dve točki, ne, ki sta po mojem ključni za konservativno misel, filozofsko misel. Prvič, in ki sta tako strukturno pomembni, no, za konservativno filozofsko misel, prvič, skeptični ali kritični odnos do modernitete kot take in do zahodne civilizacije in modernitete kot take. In druga točka je epistemološka razsežnost tradicije. Skratka, da, če navedem Edmunda Burkea, ki je oče konservativne misli, da v bistvu tradicija je v bistvu pomeni neko znanje, ki ustvarja občestvo in sicer občestvo med mrtvimi, živečimi in še nerojenimi. In to je ključno, ne, da tako razumevanje tradicije pomeni, da tradicija nam nudi neko znanje, neko obliko vednosti, ki vedno presega vednost posameznika, ne, in tudi nam narekuje, kako se moramo obnašati, kako se moramo vesti do določenih vprašanj. Zdaj, Rodove knjige so bile v tem pogledu kot naročene, ker je to on povedal še s krščanskim konservativizmom, zaradi tega, ker vsi konservativci seveda niso kristjani, in predvsem z laično platjo tega konservativizma. Mi pač slovenski kristjani poznamo konservativno misel samo v obliki dogmatične skolastike, ne pa nimamo pa laičnih konservativnih mislecev. In mislim, da ključno je pri tem tole, da s tem poskušamo razbiti monopol, ki ga izvaja liberalna kultura in levičarska kultura v Slovenski akademiji, v slovenskih založbah, v slovenskih medijih in tako naprej, s počasnim vzvajanjem te misli, pri čemer upam, da nam bo vaša založba priskočila na pomoč, ker nas je, lahko že napovemo, da bomo izdali še 2 knjige Rogerja Scrutona, jaz se zelo zavzemam tudi za Ortego y Gasseta, mogoče tudi za kakšnega klasika konservativizma, tudi Burkea in tako naprej. To je osnovni razlog je tale. Mislim, ključni namen tega, da promoviramo, prevajamo te knjige, po mojem ta, da poskušamo pluralizirati slovensko kulturo in tako odpreti javno sfero možnosti dialoga, debate in razprave, ki je trenutno slovenska javna sfera v tem pogledu popolnoma zaprta. Se vidite tudi potem, da pač določeni mediji se s tem sploh noče niti ukvarjati. In gre za vrhunske avtorje, ki sodijo prav v tradicijo zahodne misli, ki so neprevedeni pri nas.
Kot dopolnitev, če smem, gospod Lokar, bi dodal, da so se številni mediji sicer odzvali na povedano tiskovno konferenco, ampak seveda tudi termin v začetku poletja ni ravno najbolj ugoden. Nekateri mediji so tudi že izkoristili priložnost za intervju v dopoldanskem času z gospodom Dreharjem, zato morda ponujam samo kratko priložnost za kakšno dodatno vprašanje, če je še, morda, prosim.
Yes, I'd like to ask you something for you as an editor and as an author. What made you decide to become the voice for these people? Because if I may say it directly, this could be a swim in dangerous waters for someone to take this path and to become the voice for them. What made you decide to take this path and stand out for these people to be the voice of them?
Thank you for that question. It began in the year 2015. I received a phone call in Louisiana, where I live, from a doctor, a prominent doctor. And he said, look, I have to tell somebody this. My mother is very old. She lives with me and my wife. And she spent 4 years in a prison in Czechoslovakia as a young woman because she was a Catholic. And the communists put her in prison. Do you need to translate this or shall I?
I think I need to translate everything. Prevedem tudi to, ne?
Je potreben prevod ali se strinjamo, da razumemo?
Okay. And the doctor went on and said, she told me recently, son, the things I see happening in America today remind me of what was happening in my country, Czechoslovakia, when communism first came. And the doctor was really bothered by that. He said, I feel like I have to tell somebody. I said, well, that's really interesting. Well, my mother's old too, and she watches a lot of TV and gets very scared. So I thought maybe this was just an old lady who was frightened. So I made the decision to start asking people I would meet in my travels, people who had come to America from the communist countries. I would simply say, are the things you're seeing in America today, with cancel culture, that sort of thing, does it remind you of what you left behind? Every single one of them said yes. And if you talk to them long enough, they get really angry that Americans won't pay attention to them. And finally, I heard this enough, and I realized that these people are trying to tell us something very important that matters to our liberty, and nobody's listening to them. So I said, if no one will listen to them, then it's my responsibility to do that. And I was really fortunate because so many of them were grateful just to be asked. And then when I got the book contract and traveled to Central Europe and to Russia to interview dissidents, you know, I found the same thing. They were just so grateful that somebody noticed and somebody thought that the words they had to say were important to listen to today. And you know, an interesting thing is, even they don't know precisely what's going on. As a Slovak priest, I quote in my book, he said that under communism, the light of the gospel shone clearly through the darkness. But today, that light only hits fog. And I think that's really important because the nature of the totalitarianism we see happening today, it's very hard to pin down. But they still know it's happening because they can feel it in their bones. They have lived through this before. And I think it's very interesting that this book has by far been my bestseller in the US. I've written 3 New York Times bestsellers. This one is by far the biggest seller, and it has had 0 mainstream media coverage. There's a reason for that. And I think it's because the ones in the media don't want people to pay attention to the message of these emigres. It would be the most interesting story in the world, and an easy story to tell, to go talk to people in America who lived through communism to see why are they upset with this wokeness that's coming everywhere. But the media don't care to hear what they have to say. And since this book was published last year in the US, I'm starting to hear from people who came from communist China who say, oh yeah, it's happening here now and we're scared of it. People who came from Venezuela and from Cuba to America. I didn't talk to them. I focused only on European emigres, But they're saying the story of these European emigres is the same thing that we're feeling. When I was in Spain, the book has been published in Spain recently, I met two different women from Venezuela who escaped Venezuela to Spain. One of them was in tears telling me how worried she is for Spain and how she's trying to warn them all about what happened to her country. She's saying, don't think it can't happen here. But nobody wants to listen. I'm trying to get more people to listen.
Hvala lepa. Morda še kakšno vprašanje? Ne? Potem se vam pa zahvaljujem, da ste se udeležili te tiskovne konference. Zahvaljujem se gospodu Dreharju, prevajalcu, gospodu Lokarju in seveda tudi tolmački, ki nam je približala tale zanimiv pogovor. Za kaj več vas pa prijazno vabim zvečer ob 7 še na večerno samostojno predavanje gospoda Roda Dreharja, prav tako v naši stavbi. Hvala in nasvidenje.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much.